Welcome to another Your Partnerships Meet. So excited today. I have Corinne Lamoureux with me. So Corinne, so happy to have you here in the studio, in the Cornwall Channel studio on Your Partnerships Meet, and so glad to have you here with such an important announcement, or I should say message for the people. So tell us a little bit more about what all you're doing, because I know personally how important it is, the work that you do.
So what I do is I'm a mental health first aid instructor for Mental Health First Aid England, and I work independently, but I also work as an associate instructor for both MHFA England themselves and British Safety Council.
And with this, I mean, your courses, I know since everything's happened, it's all moved online now, and I think you're going to be able to start moving offline before long. But just tell us a little bit about, have you been quite busy on the online sessions?
So MHFA, and I think rightly, took the decision not to just rush courses online, because normally face-to-face our courses involve a lot of interaction and group activities and things like that. So rather than rushing into just throw it online, they actually took a step back, they went away, they completely wrote a whole new course, established a whole new platform using something called Enably, and therefore the courses weren't actually available online until the 22nd of June. Okay. And even now you're allowed to do the online course, which is the equivalent of the 2-day face-to-face, or the half-day aware, and the refresher if you're an existing MHFA person looking to refresh your skills. But that's the only courses that are still available online. But that released on the 22nd of June, and actually since then we've run courses back to back because there's a demand out there. People are coming out of lockdown and they want to know how to manage their own mental health or improve mental health within their business. Because
obviously during the lockdown, mental health awareness has been, the mental health awareness, to be fair, was already massive, you know, but obviously the lockdown has brought, let's say, new challenges, might be another way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, because, so for example, if you're somebody with anxiety, maybe when you went into lockdown, you were anxious about what COVID-19 would mean, your job, your home, etc. Then we all settled down a little bit. Yep. You learned how to manage it. Quite often for people with anxiety, you're away from a lot of the things that would make you anxious. Now we're starting to come out of it. Of course, those levels are rising again. Yep. Conversely, if you were somebody with depression, actually being isolated, being away from your day-to-day routines and all of those things could have had a very negative effect on your mental health. And we're sociable animals, so actually being isolated and away from people. I know my mental health suffered during lockdown. Because I couldn't see people, meet people, talk to people in the way that I normally would. I'm naturally a big hugger, and actually being deprived of that contact was a big thing.
We've heard all sorts of stories with it in the partnership, obviously without a doubt, because we're sociable animals, all of us in it pretty much. So tell us a little bit about the courses that are available online, and then of course what will be available in August as well, because I know that there is such a hungry appetite for it. And also once you've done that, talk a little bit about, you know, why this is so important to businesses and how it actually saves them money instead of costing them money, because you and I have talked about that before we started. Yeah.
So MHFA start with a basic half-day aware, which is a light touch, just skates very briefly over what some of the main mental health illnesses are and how to have those sort of basic conversations. Everything that MHFA does is underpinned by something called ALGE. So it talks about what that is. So the A is for, it's very similar to physical first aid in many respects. So it's assess, approach, assist. Then it talks about listening and communicating non-judgmentally, because we're all human. We all sit in judgment. We're like, oh, did you mean to wear that? Why did they say that? And we naturally sit like that. But when somebody's in the middle of a mental health issue or crisis, they need you to park that judgment. Just because it doesn't seem like much to you, it could be the end of the world to them, because it's the final straw. Then it talks about giving support and information. And again, it's information. In the same way that doing a physical first aid course doesn't mean you can then go out and perform heart surgery, as a mental health first aider, that doesn't qualify you as a counsellor or a psychologist or any of those things. It's that initial support. And then you move on to the first D, which is about encouraging professional support. So if it's, for some people, they just need that listening ear. You don't have to do all of it. You don't necessarily do it in that order. But sometimes people are going to need support from a professional, be that a counsellor or a doctor, or maybe, you know, if it's more significant and severe, somebody like a psychologist. But it's about encouraging them to get that support. And then the final E, the one that I think is where we all can play a part, is encouraging others' support. So that might be friends, family, mental health first aid qualified people, charities, helplines. I mean, there are so many great organisations out there that people don't realise exist. And so everything is underpinned by that. So once you've done the half day aware, so if that's where your sort of base level entry is, that's great. But for some organisations, maybe they want to upskill more than that, or they want to have their managers more trained. And then you'd go into the 1 day course, which makes you a mental health champion. And that's ideal for line managers who maybe aren't going to do more intensive support of somebody who's got a mental health illness or issue, but they want to be more aware, they want to know how to handle those conversations about performance at work or other things that might occur without making that problem worse. And that focuses a lot more on the business side of things, you know, why that makes that good business. And then the flagship is the 2 day face-to-face course, which makes you a mental health first aider in much the same way as doing the 2 day course would make you a physical first aider. And then, you know, currently online, you can do the half day aware if you just want to just have a light touch, better understanding of sort of what mental health issues might be at the moment. Or there's the online course, which is the equivalent of the 2 day face-to-face. And that has 4 live sessions, so 8.5 hours over 4 sessions spent online with your instructor, doing various activities, talking through things as a group. And then there are 4 lots of learning activities that you have to, not onerous, and we don't sort of mark you and, you know, send you naughty notes if you haven't sort of performed as well as you think you should have done. But you have to do that as well, so that when you come to the session, you've got some knowledge which we then expand upon to take your learning that bit deeper.
And this is with this being such a serious and deep commitment, both to yourself and your people. I mean, that's why you need a professional like yourself to hold their hand. And hold the hand may not be the right way, but someone that you're going to trust to actually go through these steps together. And that's why I think it's so important to engage with someone like yourself. Because I can imagine if you just went on to some sort of just course that you just did it, clicking buttons online without the feedback and everything, there's no way in the world to get the same level.
Yeah, I mean, as an example, there's an activity that you do called the stress container, where you look at all the things that might be stressing your life at the moment. Now, for me, I love that activity. I do that activity every 3 to 4 months just to check where my own mental health is, make sure that I'm not slipping into bad habits. Is there anything I need to do a bit of self-care on? I love it. I know lots of people who do. But I'm also aware that for some people, actually putting their thoughts down on paper like that is a really scary thing, and it triggers them in a very different way. So you have to be aware as an instructor of what's going on in the room. And I've yet to do a course where I haven't been contacted either face-to-face or even with the onlines, where at least one delegate has not got in touch and said, can I have a conversation with you about, because something that you've talked about has either made them more aware of their own situation or somebody close to them. So you've got to be willing to support and give of yourself in that way. It's not something where you just turn up, teach and clear off again, because that's just not, for me, that would be morally wrong. I'm there to improve people's mental health. So if I just go, actually, I'm just here to, you know, deliver what I have to deliver, take my check and clear off, thanks, I'm negating everything.
I know you'd be there for them 24/7, even well after they've completed and done everything. And that's kind of alluding to exactly what I was saying, why it's so important to have someone caring and not, both caring and knowledgeable doing what you do. And then the other thing that we've talked about in the past is you can just relay a little bit about why it's so important for business to engage in this, and why it's so important for them even economically, because we've talked about that in the past as well.
So the statistics pre-COVID are that 1 in 4 people will have a mental health issue every year. Now that's an issue, not an illness. So that could be a divorce, a bereavement, a house move. It might be that you're worrying about your teenager sitting their exams, but they have an impact on your mental health that with the right care and support, you'll come out the other side with no long-term damage. A bit like, you know, if you break your arm, as long as you get the right treatment for it, or you pull a muscle in your back, you know, it'll bother you for a bit, but you'll come out the other side. And that's 1 in 4 people. But the estimates say that every time as an employer you have somebody going through a mental health issue without that support, it will cost your business £1,300 a year. It doesn't take long for that to add up and really have an impact on your bottom line, you know. But you could do a course with me for a lot less than that and save yourself some money.
Oh yeah, quite a bit. Well, it's not just, and saving the money is one thing, but it's also the due care and attention that you afford your employees. And not only that, as you and I both know, it also, you carry this into the home as well, because it's also taking care of your family, your loved ones, your friends, everything around you, because you understand how it all works and everything.
Well, actually, that's the current campaign from MHFA England called My Whole Self, which is the fact that you should be able to take your whole self from home to work and back to home again, and it should be, all of it should be a safe space for somebody. So there's that. But I think the other thing as well is a lot of employers don't often understand where they sit with the law with these things, because actually under the Health and Safety at Work Act, you have a duty of care to assess for risks and hazards, and that does include mental health. Most employers don't really understand the management standards for work-related stress, but actually you're required to do a risk assessment every 12 months. If you've got more than 7 staff, you have to do risk assessments, and that does include for work-related stress. HSE have got a brilliant talking toolkit that really helps with that as well. And then of course you've got the Equalities Act, and again most people they hear it, but they don't understand what it means. So disability is one of the protected characteristics under that. But if you've got a mental health illness that has lasted or will last more than 12 months, you become protected by the Equalities Act, which means you're then entitled to reasonable adjustments. And that sounds really scary, but actually some really simple steps can be put in place. Things, some really, really simple things. So maybe you're somebody whose anxiety gets triggered by the rush hour. Well, your employer could maybe look at staggering your start and finish time so that doesn't impact you anymore. Could actually work better for the business to be able to have somebody in a bit earlier or somebody in a bit later, so you can also have longer opening times.
Having them 100% available to work as well. I mean,
so there's all of that, you know, and so it's not scary. It just needs unpicking a bit. And mental health illness, psycho, schizo, they're going to stab us in the back in the middle of the night. You know, that's what people think, but it's not the case. No. It's not the case. People, even with the most severe mental health illnesses, like psychosis, schizophrenia, etc., are far, far more likely to be the victims of violent crime than they ever are the perpetrators. It's just that it doesn't sell good press to talk about that.
I mean, we talked earlier about, and I'm not sure how many people are aware of it, but presenteeism itself. If you explain a little bit about presenteeism and the cost of that.
Well, presenteeism is where, particularly if you maybe are only going to get SSP if you go off sick and you can't pay your bills on that, or you've got a punitive sickness health policy where if you're off more than X number of occasions in a year or off more than X number of days in a year, they can start triggering, you know, written warnings and verbal warnings and all of that. So people get scared of that. So rather than admitting that they're not in a good place and they shouldn't be at work, they need some time to do some self-care, they go in. And the problem with that is, if you were employing me and I phoned you up on a Monday morning and went, Brock, really sorry, got a terrible migraine, I can't make those events today. You'd scramble, you'd get somebody else to go there and replace me. A few little glitches along the way, but someone would be there representing your brand, doing all the right things. But if it was because actually I'd woken up on a Monday morning and my depression had triggered, but I was scared that, you know, Brock, bad evil boss, is going to sack me if I take another day off. So instead I go. But I'm lacklustre and I'm not on form and I don't represent your brand very well. And maybe I missed a key thing that, you know, needed to be done because I'm just not all there that day. That has a significant impact because you won't be aware of it until after the event. Deadline gets missed, a project doesn't get completed, you know, a client's unhappy, leaves, goes somewhere else. And that has a big cost, because then your brand's getting damaged as well. And
it costs more than not even making the appointment to begin with, depending on what it is.
Yeah, exactly. And they estimate that costs 3 times as much as sickness absence.
Wow.
So if you put in perspective that they say that mental health absence costs businesses in the UK between 33 and 42 billion pounds, you can treble that for presenteeism.
Yeah. Crazy. It's crazy. I mean, we were saying earlier that basically it cost you, well, remember I said what we talked about earlier is the £1 and £5 episode.
Yeah.
So for every £1 that I spend on this, I get £5 in return by doing those statistics. So I don't know how many of us wouldn't sit there and trade £1 coin for £5 notes all day long. So
well, exactly.
it's the same scenario.
And that's not MHFA statistics. Yeah. That's so this initially started with the Stevenson Pharma Review, which was the government white paper a few years back. But then earlier this year, Deloitte, big blue chip company, they researched this, and their statistics, which were only released in January of this year, their statistics say that for every £1 you invest in quality mental health training, because obviously a lot of people are jumping on the bandwagon now, but every time you invest £1 in mental health training, you'll get £5 back in terms of increased productivity, reduced staff absenteeism, staff retention, better customer service, etc., etc. I don't know of anything else that you could invest £1 in where a company like Deloitte will tell you you'll get £5 back. And FTSE 100 performance, if you look at their performance, there's also a lot of evidence that shows that companies that talk about investing in mental health and well-being in their reports and accounts, that have published policies and ways of dealing with this, their shares perform better because people want to invest in them for ethical reasons.
It's an investment. It's an investment in your business and in the person. And that's the thing that I always say all the time is, we will go and pay that maintenance fee to keep a machine running. We'll go and pay that, get your card, all these sort of things. But you have to invest in your people. And your people are your most invaluable tool that you have in your entire business, in most cases. So.
And I think one of the other things I'd also like to say about it is, I'm older. I've lived life. I've had my own issues and struggles with my mental health over time. One of the best things that Mental Health First Aid did for me was it taught me about self-care. It taught me about the importance of protecting my own mental health. What's the old saying? You can't pour from an empty pot.
Yep.
Well, one of the things you learn about this is how to protect that. When, the stress container exercise is a prime example. So I do more, give more, and support more people now than I've ever done. But my own mental health is healthier than it's ever been. Yeah. And when it's struggling, I give myself permission to take a step back and look after it. In much the same way as, it always amazes me, the people that will go out and spend a fortune on gym membership and vitamins and all these other things that they'll do to protect their physical health. I'm a prime example, hair, facials, massages, etc. There's an awful lot of money invested in physical maintenance. But actually, we also need to invest in this, because if your mental health starts going down, your physical will go with it. Because, like the best of us, I'm much more likely to get up and go and do some physical activity and eat a healthy diet and not drink too much tea or eat too many biscuits or, worst of all, alcohol, if I'm in a good place mentally. But if I'm not,
just the opposite.
I'll go and do all the things, and I'm an IBS sufferer. I'll go and do the things that I know are going to make me ill. But I want that instant comfort. So as I say, for me, it's an obvious one. If you're going to invest in your physical health, invest in your mental health too.
Your products themselves, obviously, you're available online and about to, was it called COVID Secure?
COVID Secure. MHFA England have literally this month said that as long as there is a COVID Secure risk assessment and proper precautions are taken to allow people to meet, in a room safely. So, for example, a prime example would be if you're an employer in a school, you've got a big school hall or maybe a big staff canteen where everyone can be sort of properly spaced out and socially distanced. We can now do the courses face to face. But I have to say, I was dubious, but I loved the online course. It's a great, I've delivered 3 now, fantastic reviews from them, and I was worried as an instructor that I wouldn't be able to offer that one-to-one and that support for people that I'm used to doing. But actually it works really well. And
now you have a new tool, because you always did it face-to-face, and now you have it online. You have 2 tools, so that's great. It's great.
And in some respects it's been lovely, because you've had people sort of from much further geographical areas. So you've been able to get different stories and different takes on things, because I could sit there and rattle on forever about my knowledge about mental health that I've garnered from doing all these courses, and I still, come back to the fact I'm a mental health first aid instructor. I'm not a counsellor, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not pretending to be. But the best thing is when you do a course and other people share their stories.
Yep.
Because that's when you know it's a good course, because A, you've made it safe for them to do so, and B, they start gelling and they form their own little network and their own little group, and you know how important that is.
Definitely.
So it's fantastic.
And also, not being funny, but it's greener. So you're traveling all over, but it's good. It's good. I'm glad you have that tool, and it's but for some people, because we are talking about mental things here, personality-wise, some people just prefer face-to-face, simple as that, or can retain it better as well, because you're also talking about a teaching environment.
But that's one of the great things. I mean, if you look, this is the mummy of the. Yep. So everybody gets a manual, regardless of what course they do, they get a manual. But this is the 2-day manual or the online course manual, and you'll see it. I mean, it's like 300 odd pages, I think, nearly 300 pages. It's huge, and it gets broken down into all the sections, including really usefully a whole section at the back that's all helpful resources of charities and stuff that you can turn to. These obviously being the national ones. Yeah. But it'll have a whole section on first aid for anxiety disorders, what is an anxiety disorder, etc. And I always say to people, I mean, you can see mine's all dog-eared and tattered and got tabs in it and everything, because even though I've been doing this for a while now, if you came to me and say, Corinne, I think I might be struggling with depression, I'm not sure, and I'm I've got this and this going on. Yep. I'll go, do you know what? Why don't we dig out the manual? Why don't we have a look and see what that says? Because then we're working through it together. I'm not taking control away from you, but I'm also making sure that what I give you is really factual. It's that information, not advice again. And we can go through it together. And you still retain ownership. So nobody's expected to come on the course and remember everything that's in a manual this big.
And I know you'd say the same thing. So then the manager in the business that's done that, they have this resource to go back on and study and bring back out.
Your manuals want to look like mine. They want to look a bit dog-eared and well loved, because it means they're being used. Well, you don't want it tucked away in a drawer looking absolutely pristine.
I disagree. I'd want it pristine, never been opened, because no one has a problem. What's the chances of that?
That's not going to be realistic. And then the other one as well is that everybody who does the course, regardless of what level of course they do, has access to one of these online. You don't get a free one because they cost 10 quid to produce, but they get access to one of these online, which is actually specifically aimed at line managers, and it has a whole different approach to it. So it will go through things like promoting well-being, recruitment and mental health. It'll talk about what are reasonable adjustments. It'll talk about keeping in touch during sickness, absence. And then the resource section in that is specifically focused around work. Okay. And that, again, as soon as you've done the course, you get access to that. You can download it. It's all yours,
So what I was going to earlier, I mean, obviously the face-to-face that's coming back. So you're doing your online weekly as is it as need be, or are you publishing out all the time when you're doing these, or how does that work?
I publish out all the time, or people can contact me directly. Okay. Again, you can only have 12 people on the course. Okay. You need 6 really to make it work. So if somebody says, well, actually I want one that's specifically focused around my business because we have specific issues, or we're in construction, which has different things than maybe an office, or we want to make sure that our employee assistance programs mentioned and referenced. Then we can do a bespoke one. So get in touch. I can do that. Obviously, I'm still doing work for MHFA and British Safety Council, where I'm working for them as an associate. So that then makes my availability less. But
Cool, excellent. Well, I know when this video is going out, the people looking at it now will have all the details on there. Just hit on the links there so you can get a hold of Corinne. And lastly, I from me personally, and I'll check see if you have anything else to cover. Is I know you've been such a big help to all the people in the partnership. You've been there. They know they can turn to you and trust you. And I think that's what a lot of this whole video is about. Is it's a professionally trained person that people can trust and come to about this. I want to say sensitive matter, but it's not. It's this everyday matter. And
I was going to say
that's what I think I think that's what we get wrong a lot of times when it comes to mental health. People think that it's some sort of taboo thing we stay away from, but it's there every day. You can't ignore it.
And and we have to start raising. I mean, I'm a bit of a tub thumper on this one, but I am, because if I say that I've been supporting somebody who last year was the last person that spoke to a colleague before they went off for October half term, and this person, 25 years of age, couldn't face going back to work, couldn't see any other way out of it, and she suicided, 25 years of age. If we'd broken down that taboo, if we'd broken down that stigma, if we'd made it clear that 1 in 5 people will have suicidal thoughts in their lifetime, maybe that beautiful, vibrant young woman would still be with us. And the lady I've been supporting wouldn't have been horribly traumatised, and her mother wouldn't be about to go to her inquest this week. And we've got to change the language around things, because at the end of the day, if we don't, people die. And that's the bottom line.
It is the bottom line, and I think it's just as clear as this. Going back to the same example you said earlier, if you saw someone fall over and break their arm, you wouldn't just ignore them and never look for treatment, would you? No. So it's the same thing in mental health. You've got to have the tools available to fix that. Absolutely. What it is. Simply that.
And if you just want sort of a bit more general information or some resources or whatever, obviously, I mean, I've tried throughout lockdown to keep posting up any quality free resources that I come across, because sometimes that's what people need. They just want to explore a bit more, and that's always put on my Facebook page.
Yeah, definitely. Well, definitely get in touch with Corinne on Facebook, LinkedIn, and all the links will be on here, and just reach out and make that contact and get booked in as soon as you can. So it's been a pleasure having you here. Did we miss anything else? Any message you might want to get out? Oh, I've put her under pressure now. I guess my thing is that whether you do it through me or somebody else, or you or whatever you do, please make sure that if you're struggling, if you feel like there isn't someone for you to talk to, please, however you reach out and whatever way you do it, please reach out. The Samaritans are always there. If you're under 35, there's Papyrus. If you're male, there's Calm, the campaign against living miserably. There are lots and lots of organisations out there that can and will help you, and they'll do it on the phone, they'll do it via text, they'll do it via email, whatever medium suits you. But whatever you do, please don't just sit there in silence. Don't sit with it, because you don't have to. No, there will be somebody there that will help you, and they'll want to help you. You're not a burden. Yeah, cool. Well, thank you so much. You're going to make a lot of people's lives even better than you have in the past already, and love these new products. And so happy that it's online for you now as well, and working. It felt so good to be back to. It felt so good to be doing what I love doing. It really did. I was just delighted to be back to it. And if we don't find you teaching mental health, we know we'll find you on the golf course as well. So. Well, that's good for my mental health. That's my mental health, and it's those things, the things that help my mental health are my golf, reading, and funnily enough, knitting. And actually, in the States, Brock, they prescribe a course of knitting to help treat depression. It is knitting, crocheting, all of those things, needlepoint. Yeah. Just so that you're focusing on that. It's like a form of mindfulness. Yeah. It is. Thank you so much. Been fantastic. Thank you, Cornwall Channel, for allowing us to have this beautiful lady with this wonderful message in the studio today. So thank you and take care. Good to see you next time on Your Partnerships Meets.